Welcome to the iPad Podcast, a weekly podcast from Mac's Future.
Okay, welcome to the iPad Podcast, and this is a monumental episode because this is episode 100. I've done 100 of these iPad podcasts that came out shortly after the first iPad came out. I've been trying to do it every week, so I should have hit 100 about a month or two ago, but I skipped a couple of weeks here and there because of illness or whatever. But anyways, this is Lex at MacsFuture.com, and this is the iPad Podcast, and this is Memorial Day weekend, Sunday, May 27th, 2012. And you can support this audio commercial-free podcast by giving it a positive review in the iTunes Store, or go to Blip TV or YouTube, or check out the video version of this under Mac's Future in the iTunes Store. So this is a chit-chat-free podcast all about the iPad, iPad-related news, iPad-related apps, iPad-related hardware, all things iPad. So let's get to it. Okay, so the first story I want to talk about is something that I saw in TUAW.com. And they're actually reporting on something that a Boy Genius report, a BGR, another website, reported on, which has been something we've been talking about for a long time, which is when is Microsoft going to finally put Microsoft Office on the iPad? After all, the iPad, what are there, like about 100 million iPads out there or something like that. And, you think Microsoft, a software company, would, put Microsoft Office applications on the iPad. Microsoft has other applications already on the iPad, but the actual, key programs like Microsoft Word, Microsoft PowerPoint, Microsoft Excel do not exist yet on the iPad, although other Microsoft Office related software does. So the article that came out on May 25th by Kelly Hodgkins in TUAW, reporting on something that BGR reported, said that that Microsoft is working on a version of Office for the iPad and is bringing the complete Office suite to both the iPad and Android tablets by November of this year. It goes on to say Boy Genius reports source claims the version he saw was almost identical to the one leaked earlier this year by the Daily newspaper. And it says the Daily got wind of the BGR report and responded with a post directed at Microsoft that was sharp and forthright. The authors called Microsoft, quote, filthy, lying liars, end quote, for allegedly showing the Daily a version of the Office software for the iPad and then saying publicly it was not a real picture of a real Microsoft product. So, wow, the Daily is like Murdoch's paper, so pretty nasty response. They have a link to that on their website. Let's see what the Daily says here. What lies beneath? Setting record straight on Microsoft Office for iPad. So they must have been pretty upset with Microsoft. If you recall, earlier this year, the Daily reported that they saw a version of Office for the iPad, and then Microsoft said there is none. So this is actually pretty entertaining. This daily.com article says, "Yo, Microsoft, you guys are filthy lying liars. That's right, we know you guys are fibbers, and now our readers do too. You may have read a post on the Boy Genius report yesterday detailing the release of an Office software productivity suite for the iPad as early as November. Sound familiar? That's because the Daily reported the exact same thing last February. Two of our young employees who worked on the project verified its existence. One even gave us a demo. We snapped pictures. But then you had the audacity to slither behind our backs and whine to ZDNet that the image we featured was, quote, not a real picture of a real Microsoft software product, end quote. It was a lie, but a lie with enough wiggle room so you could snake your way out of it." Well, I don't think Microsoft's going to be advertising on the Daily anytime soon. Then it goes on to say, what we saw was not a finished Microsoft product. It was maybe 90 to 95% complete, but still needed some fine-tuning. And for you, that was enough to issue a denial. It's like pointing at a martini and saying that's not a drink just because the bartender hasn't plopped in an olive. That's pretty funny, actually. I'm just commenting on the Daily's article here. Then it goes on to say the iPad edition of Office, according to BGR, looks almost identical to the picture we featured in our article. BGR also claims you're working on an edition of Office for Android-based devices, and that you may be working on Office editions for the iPhone and iPod Touch as well. When we reached out to you for comment, one of your flacks told us, quote, Microsoft does not comment on rumors or speculation, end quote. Okay, fine. You have to admit this makes you guys look petty and out of touch. But it's cool. We still love you, so let's put all this behind us. Please don't send us a sweaty Steve Ballmer to smash up the Daily's Xbox. That's pretty entertaining. So, look, so what do we think about that? You know, I think it's going to be great, you know, because already the iPad's making inroads into enterprise, and there are all sorts of, you know, apps that can run certain Microsoft-generated files like Microsoft Word and PowerPoint. Frankly, you know, Pages can open up Microsoft Word and you can read and edit it there. And then there are these sort of Microsoft Office third-party, you know, wannabes. And then there's stuff that can run PowerPoint as well as, you know, for example, Keynote. Apple's Keynote can import and export to PowerPoint. It's not always perfect because there might be different fonts or different animations in PowerPoint that don't work on Keynote in the iPad, but still a basic PowerPoint can be open and closed. And I think Apple's Numbers spreadsheet can do the same with Excel. But still, if Microsoft does come out with Office for the iPad, it's going to be a big boon for those who want to use the iPad in the enterprise. Because as many of you working in the enterprise, like me during my day job, know, Microsoft totally swamps the enterprise. And Microsoft Office is all over the enterprise. So the more the iPad can be compatible with, in a pure sense, with Microsoft Office, the better it's going to be for Microsoft, for the iPad to make inroads. So I'm kind of looking forward to this. It would be nice if it came out earlier than November, but we'll have to see. Maybe, you know, Windows 8, Windows for Tablet 8 is coming out in the fall, so maybe Microsoft is holding off and doesn't want to release Microsoft Office for the iPad until after Windows 8 comes out on tablet. Maybe the people developing the tablet saying, look, we got to give, you know, Windows 8 for the tablet a chance, and if you release Microsoft Office first on the iPad, what chance is that going to have? So that's probably why they're waiting until November. There was some consternation in the world that watches Apple's app approval for the iOS devices, including the iPad and the iPhone. In particular, there was consternation because a beloved developer, the guy who makes Audio Hijack, the company's called Rogue Amoeba, they had an app approved in the App Store that worked both on the iPad and the iPhone, and then after it was approved, Apple recently pulled it. Now, that app is Airfoil Speakers Touch. Now, what Rogue Amoeba specializes in audio. Their flagship program, Audio Hijack, on the Mac Pro allows you to basically record any audio that comes in and out of the Macintosh from a website, or if you want to record into it, and it's a great utility. And they also have long had a software for the Mac called Airfoil that allows you to send any sound from a Mac to like an Airport Express, which could connect to speakers. And they recently released an app called Airfoil Speakers Touch, would turn your iPad or iPhone into an audio receiver from any Mac running Airfoil, which is pretty cool. So apparently Apple booted the app, and some thought that's because, you know, Apple's going to implement it itself. So people thought this was kind of, you know, bad of Apple to approve it and then you know, yank it. Well, there's been some information that's come out as to why it happened. And Daring Fireball's John Gruber had an interesting post, more on Apple's removal of Airfoil Speakers Touch from the App Store. And basically the key is that the third version of the app had something in it that I think ran foul of Apple's guidelines. It says here in his quote, "The other major feature in AirFoil speakers is the new enhanced audio receiving option. With an inexpensive in-app purchase, your iOS device becomes a full-fledged mobile AirPlay receiver. That means you can stream audio from one iOS device to another, or even send from iTunes directly to iOS. Why spend hundreds on a costly third-party AirPlay device when you can use the iOS device you already have?" And John Gruber says, "As I understand it, it's not that Apple yanked AirFoil speakers Touch after it had been in the store for 3 years. It's that they yanked version 3 after it had been in the store for a month, and the issue is the above-quoted new feature." And it says, "Apple doesn't provide APIs for apps to service AirPlay receivers." And it says that Rogue Amoeba backward engineered the protocol and coded their own iOS AirPlay receiver implementation using only public APIs. And then John Gruber says, "I think the bottom line is that Apple is saying that apps are not allowed to act as AirPlay receivers on iOS, but there's no App Store guideline that explicitly forbids it." So they're citing that the fact that Rogue Amoeba used non-public APIs. And it goes on to say in the licensing agreement, Apple applications may only use documented APIs in the manner prescribed by Apple and must not use or call any private APIs. So, I guess he's saying it's not surprising that Apple, would yank it. And so I guess it's because of that. But who knows, maybe Apple will at some point create APIs that allow iOS devices to act as like AirFoil, and receive audio. So personally, I didn't buy this app, but I can understand why people are annoyed that this happened. But on the other hand, Apple, it's very specific, has specific guidelines, specific APIs, and you have to sort of abide by them. So big news this past Friday. Friday was Jailbreak Day, and the Jailbreak community, led by the Chronic dev team, finally was able to jailbreak iOS 5.1.1, which is the latest operating system for the iPad and the iPhone. And most importantly, they found a way for the first time to jailbreak the iPad 3rd generation, because that's been running the more recent operating system, and it has new hardware that makes it harder to jailbreak. And so it came out Friday, and it's basically they have a tool on the Mac. I guess it's called AppSynth 2.0. Actually, it works on Windows too. And basically, you back up your iPad and make sure that it's you've got the latest Apple operating system 5.1.1. And then you just run this AppSynth tool while your iPad's connected to your computer. And then it goes through the whole jailbreaking. Now, if you're not familiar with jailbreaking, what jailbreaking does is it gets around Apple's restriction that says you can't have non-Apple app stores on the iOS device. So remember, there's only two ways that Apple allows you to get apps on your iPad. One is through Apple's own App Store, and the other is to save a website or a web-based application that is made on the web directly through Safari to the home screen of your iPad. And web apps aren't generally that good. There was a few clever ones that I've played around with, but for the most part, native apps you can only get through the App Store. But jailbreaking, which has been around since the early days of the iPad, people basically create programs that get around Apple's restrictions and install a third-party store on your iPad. And the biggest and most famous third-party store is Cydia, Cydia. And when you jailbreak using this AppSynth tool, you end up getting an icon, which is the Cydia store. Let me see if I can give you, if you're looking at the video version of this, what it looks like. So if you're looking at the video version of this podcast, I'm showing you what my the home screen, I guess, of my 3rd generation iPad, and I put in a folder certain jailbreak icons and applications. And the key one is Cydia. This is this brown icon, and this is basically the third-party store. And Cydia is pretty advanced. The beauty of Cydia is once it's installed, if you just log into your email associated with your account, it remembers all the apps that you bought and allows you to download them and not pay anything extra. So even when I take off my jailbreak on my iDevice, I'm able to restore it. So one of the reasons I like to jailbreak my iPad is to run third-party programs. And one third-party program that I run is Display Recorder, which allows you to do video screen recording of your iPad. And I've had it for a while, and it's a great way to do tutorials. And so, that's a powerful reason to use it. Now, I've emailed the developer, Ryan Petrick, because on this Retina display iPad, I'm getting an error, and it's not recording on my iPad. And I don't know if it's just me or anybody with a Retina display. And it could be because maybe he hasn't upgraded it to take advantage of the Retina display. The weird thing is, though, it does work. There's one feature of Display Recorder that's nice, is if you don't want to record and save a movie right on the iPad, it's got a web version of it where you can get the HTTP address of the iPad and then view it in real time on the browser. And right now, as I'm recording this, I'm doing exactly that. In other words, I'm screen recording on my Macintosh through the browser interface that shows me what's on my iPad. And there's a little bit of lag because of the Wi-Fi, but it's generally, showing my, my fingers and my movements and stuff. So, but there's other cool apps. For example, iFile is an app that shows you the underlying file structure of the iPad and the iPhone. And you can do kind of nifty things with that, because if you can get into the guts of the iPad, you can do stuff to modify the iPad in interesting ways. Like, I'll give you an example. When Apple came out with the iPhoto app with the launch of the 3rd generation iPad, it said it would only run on devices running iOS 5.1. Well, I couldn't jailbreak an iOS 5.1 device, and I had jailbroken my old iPad 2, and it was running iOS 5, and I wanted to run iPhoto on it, but I couldn't download iPhoto because Apple's App Store would recognize that I wasn't running 5.1 and would not install it. So there was a little bit of a hack. Following instructions on the internet and using iFile, you could go into a certain file setting and change the information that Apple saw when my iPad was communicating with Apple. And so I just basically changed it so that Apple would think that I was running iOS 5.1. And so then iPhoto downloaded and installed, even though I was running iOS 5.0. So you can do kind of cool things like that. There's other cool apps that modify and make your iPad more interesting. One is this, standard, and it comes with Display Recorder, is Activator. And Activator is really cool because Activator goes into your settings and it allows you to sort of control through gestures all sorts of activities on your iPad. It's very powerful. So, for example, if you're looking at the screen there, I can, from anywhere in the iPad, I can, check that function. I can say, okay, from anywhere in the iPad, let's take the home button. If I double press the home button, I want something to happen. Now, with Apple, there's only various things that you can do if you double click the home button. It will put the app switcher tray up. But I could, for example, say when I double click the home button, I want the following system actions to happen. Power down. Immediately powers down on the device. So that would be kind of useful if you just wanted, you didn't feel like pressing, if you didn't want to go through the trouble of powering down by holding the top button and the bottom button. Let's say you just like to power down your iPad a lot. Well, you could use the Activator method to just power down by double pressing the home button. But you have other choices here. It's very powerful. You could have double pressing the home button reboot your iPad, or put it to sleep. Other things that it could do is you could double pressing the home button. If there's an app that you like to use a lot, it can activate that app. So it could be like a shortcut to a certain app that you use all the time. So for example, let's say, I don't know, let's pick an app. Let's say you like to use iTunes a lot, or the music player app. You could just set it so whenever you double click the home button, the music button activates. So let's see if I can show you how this works. I'm going to double click the home button, and boom, look at that. The music app just sort of started. So that's okay. Now that's kind of annoying though, because I like to get to the the apps that were active, and the only way I can do that now is just by 4-finger swipe up. So I'm gonna unclick that, and let's see other things. Well, it's very powerful because, okay, let's go. In addition to double tapping the home button, you can do other things. Let's say you can, when you shake your device, you can have certain things happen. When you power the device, certain things could happen. When you disconnect from power, certain things could happen. Other power, I mean, it really is an incredibly powerful tool, and this might be reason enough to jailbreak. Now, other cool Cydia tweaks that I've used in the past, but I don't have now, involve really customizing the folders. You can there's one utility, I forget how much it costs. It's only a couple of bucks, but it allows you to have like folders within folders. So it's very powerful, and it also allows you to increase the number of apps that you have in folders. So the ability to put folders within folders really is a level of complexity that Apple doesn't really want people to have on the iPad. But if you jailbreak your iPad, you can do that, and it can be almost like a computer. So there's a lot of cool little apps and tweaks. There's also, for example, apps that on the iPhone that supplement Siri. So those are the things that I generally use on the iPad. It's mainly display recorder and iFile that are an Activator that are the things that I really like. So anyways, let's go back to the issue of jailbreaking. So I just, if you're not familiar with jailbreaking, I will say this. My understanding is that it's legal, that the United States Copyright Office has already ruled that it's okay to jailbreak your iDevice. Now, Apple doesn't condone it, but frankly, if you brick your iPad or iPhone and you go into an Apple store and just say, please help restore this, if you don't blurt out that you jailbreaked it, most people are just going to, restore it. So personally, I don't think there's a big risk legally or from Apple in jailbreaking your iPhone or iPad. To some extent, I think iPad jailbreaking is something that sort of Apple, generally looks the other way, because a lot of the tweaks that the jailbreakers make to the iPad eventually end up getting incorporated, it seems, by Apple. So anyways, if you're into your iPad a lot and you like to jailbreak it, Friday was a good day because the jailbreak came out that, among other things, allowed the 3rd generation iPad to be jailbroken. Okay, so other big news this week, and it was actually a big news week for the iPad. Yahoo delivered a new browser, and basically it's for the iPad and the iPhone, and I guess for Android it's coming also. And the browser acts as like a plug-in to Safari or to Firefox or Chrome on a Mac, but it's an app on the iPad, and it's free, and it's called Axis, A-X-I-S. And it basically allows synchronization of browsing for the iPad and on your desktop. And I'm reading a story about it in TUAW.com. And so basically, if you put this plugin into your Firefox browser, I guess also in Safari, it can sync your use of this Axis program. And Yahoo bills it as a new way to search and browse. It says here in the article, Axis aims to give you your searches more flexibility and flair with predictive results, swipe to view search thumbnails, and as well as the synchronization of recent pages. And it is a pretty app. As the article points out, the theme is very dark gray compared to Safari's lighter look. And it also includes sharing options for Pinterest and Twitter. Plus, you can email URLs and you can log into it. And if you install the plugin, it syncs your tabs and search results. The article says that Axis has some rough spots, particularly with pictures. So if you're let's go to the let's see if I can get this down within view. All right, so here is what Axis looks like if you're looking at the iPad version of this. There's kind of like a tile theme to this thing. I have like one tab on the bottom left corner. If you click on a plus sign, you can add another website, and then you can quickly see your tabs just by pressing that button. And so you can have multiple tabs open. I wonder if I do upward gestures. No, you just have to press the button. And then the websites are organized like the read later sites, my favorites, continue from device. So I don't know. This is a kind of a different way to have a browser. It says here you can sign in to customize your bookmarks. I'm going to try to use it without signing in and see what happens. Let's go to CNN, go, and it brings up like sort of square, like rectangular views of your results, and you can scroll. So I've gotten like a lot of results for CNN, and so they're different windows, little tiles. In a way, I wonder if this is what Windows 8 for tablets is going to look like, a lot of squares and such. So, it's a nice addition to the iPad. It's free. It's good to see that Yahoo's now, trying to do something innovative. And, I'll play around with it. Right now, I don't know if it's going to be a real substitute for Safari. Hey, let me just try putting Max Future in there and seeing how it comes out. Let's see if my website comes out, Max Future. And yeah, so boom, you get like these tiles. First it shows my Twitter account on on Twitter. And I guess it uses Bing as the search engine. And then it has some hits of me on YouTube, some of the stuff I put on YouTube. And, it's different. It's definitely different than the Safari browser. You basically have like these horizontal rows. In the top row are your search results. and then you have your read later row, and then your favorite rows, and then continuing from device. So I think it's worthwhile to play around with since it's free. So you should check it out. It's called Axis, A-X-I-S. Now the iPad got Apple into a little bit of hot water. It looks like at its launch, because as we know from the Justice Department's lawsuit against several book publishers and Apple, it was around the launch of the iPad, 2 years ago, that Apple arranged for ebooks to be sold on the iPad from the get-go, and in doing so, negotiated an agency model with the different book publishers. And the Justice Department has sued Apple and several book publishers, claiming antitrust violations, that there was an agreement to keep up prices. Well, Apple answered the Justice Department's complaint, and as Fortune magazine's Philip Elmer DeWitt has pointed out, Apple has come back fighting in its answer. The headline from Philip Elmer DeWitt is "Apple to DOJ Bite Me." And basically it's saying that Apple's pointing out that if anything, the iPad's entry into the ebook market helped competition, that prior to Apple entering the ebook market with the iPad, Amazon pretty much had a monopoly on ebooks and the Kindle reader. And, Phil Elmer DeWitt quotes from a key article in Apple's answer. It says, quote, "The government starts from the false premise that an ebooks market was characterized by robust price competition prior to Apple's entry. This ignores a simple and uncontrovertible fact. Before 2010, there was really no competition. There was only Amazon. At the time Apple entered the market, Amazon sold nearly 9 out of every 10 ebooks, and its power over price and product selection was nearly absolute. Apple's entry spurred tremendous growth in ebook titles range and a variety of offerings, sales, and improved quality of the ebook reading experience. This is evidence of a dynamic, competitive market. These inconvenient facts are ignored by the complaint. Instead, the government focuses on increased prices for a handful of titles. The complaint does not allege that all ebook prices or even most ebook prices increased after Apple entered the market." Now, I discuss this response by Apple more at length in my Apple podcast, which came out earlier today. But it's interesting. It looks like Apple is definitely going to continue litigating this issue. Personally, I find there's a lot of competition now with ebooks, because I have the Kindle app on the iPad, and I also have the iBook app, and I buy books sometimes from Apple on the iBook store and sometimes from Amazon. And if I also have access to other ebook readers like the Barnes & Noble's Nook reader, and I think even Kobo, that used to be Borders. So, I think since Apple came out with the iPad, I do think there's more competition in the ebook market. Also this week, a major upgrade came to a Flipboard-like competitor called Pulp that is on the iPad, as well as there's a version on the Mac App Store. So Pulp currently, I guess, is selling for $2.99, and it got a major upgrade to version 1.5. Now, Pulp is basically like Flipboard, but the layout is more like traditional newspaper that you can, sort of lay it out. You don't have all this flipping stuff going on. There's new features in Pulp. It says there's a new homepage feature that analyzes your existing feeds and shows you the most important stories in one place. And now it works with iCloud, and so you can sync your Pulp app on the iPad with your Pulp app on the Mac. It says iCloud now keeps all of your Macs and iPads seamlessly in sync, and it replaces previous Pulp sync service, and it's optimized for the Retina display and the user interface tweaks and improvements. Now, over at The Verge, they had a nice, interesting review that gives you insight on this app. I've never used it, but I'm sort of tempted to use it. Over at TheVerge.com, the writer Sam Byford, he seems to like Pulp and its upgrade to both the Mac version and the iPad version. And he basically has an interesting take on it. He says, Pulp has been around for a while, but it occupies a curious niche in the App Store. It's somewhere between Flipboard and Reader, with the comfortable newspaper-style layout of the former and the flexibility of the latter. It says you can place RSS feeds anywhere you like in a customized layout and control how they appear. So, for example, you have a simple list of headlines from the New York Times next to Verge stories with lead images. He says the app takes a bit of time to set up in a way that'll work for you, but if you're anything like me, you'll appreciate having a familiar lookout where sources remain in the same place. And he's got a point in this review. He says he never got into apps like Flipboard because he couldn't shake the feeling that he'd be missing something important. So it's sort of a clean, simple design. You don't have these sort of flowing, flipping pages. It's more like a straight out design. And, if you use it a lot and maybe get the Mac app version too, you'll have, your news covered everywhere. So I don't know. It's an interesting alternative to Flipboard and the other news services. Now, I've been long been saying that the iPad is a productivity device, and it's getting closer to rivaling the Macintosh as a productivity device, particularly when apps like the following are coming out, and that is Diet Coda. Now, Coda has been an app on the Macintosh to essentially do development and create websites. And the company behind it has released something called Diet Coda. And, basically it's a powerful tool. It's expensive. It costs $19.99. In terms of size, it's 17 megabytes or 18 megabytes. So it says here, and basically Diet Coda helps you supplements the Coda app on the Macintosh. It says here, what happens when you take the power of Coda, our Mac OS X web code editor, and crunch it down into a powerful feature-packed iPad package, including introducing Diet Coda, the best way to make quick edits to your websites on the go. And so this is what you can do. If you have a website that you'd like to edit through your iPad, you can do remote editing. It edits documents right on your server or staging server. You have powerful FTP and SFTP file management, open, rename, modify, change permissions, the works. You can quickly get to work on sites on your server. You have syntax highlighting, so you can work with development language like HTML, CSS, JS, PHP, and more. You have something called a super loop, that's LOUPE, which allows you to position the cursor in iOS isn't fun, and so they've got a special way to position the cursor using like a super loop. What else? It's got a contextual keyboard, the right special characters, clips. You can insert chunks of code with a single tap. You can, apparently they've got something called the groundbreaking wildcard token. You can find and replace within your app development. And you have a powerful prompt built in and Air Preview. This is what they call "and one more thing." So it says here, with Air Preview, you can use your iPad as a dedicated preview window for Coda 2 on the Mac. I guess it works wirelessly. So look, if you're into website development, I don't think $20 is that much to spend to give you the flexibility of doing stuff from the iPad. The reviews, and there's a lot of reviews. I think this has been out just, since May 24th, and there is 243 reviews, and it has 5.5 stars. So let's see, the one that's the most helpful, the number one, it says, it gives it only 3 stars. It says, no offline editing, requires a server. And it says, so that is a limitation. In other words, you have to be wirelessly connected to a server. And it says here, turns out that the key feature remote editing is actually the feature no offline editing. You need a server to use this app. This is pretty major limitation to only hint at. Can't tell you how the app is as an editor because I haven't been able to use it yet. Consider Textactic. So, and then another person also is very upset about the lack of offline editing and said, no offline editing. I did not see any mention of this limitation, 1 star. And so that seems to be the major gripe. Another person says, well, I don't know, maybe a competitor is putting like these posts because some of these posts are saying people should use Textastic, I guess, which is another developmental program. But overall, the positive reviews are pretty overwhelming because it's getting 5.5 stars out of 243 ratings. So for $20, if you're a heavy coder for websites, it's probably worth it. Now, another key app that got an upgrade on May 23rd is Google's own Google Search app. The major upgrade was really for the iPhone because they really totally redesigned how it looks on the iPhone. But the iPad also got an upgrade. Now you can save images in your camera roll from the Google Search app. But, Google Search is a very, very powerful app because it's really like you have all this, it's not just search, you have all this stuff from Google services. And even Google Plus is integrated with Google Search. Let's take a look at it through my interface with my iPad. Okay, if you're looking at the screen, I've launched here the Google Search app, and it's not just search. And even if you're using it for search, it's got interesting features. For example, it's got the voice dictation using Google's own search. So here, let me try something. Let me say, what am I going to say? How about iPad? Let's try it again. iPad. So it recognized iPad. It was pretty quick, and it gives me hits. So that's cool. So you have this dictation function. But look at all the applications that you can use within this app. So if you're connected to the internet, and that's, I guess, the key, you can use the Gmail function of your account, your calendar function, your docs function, the news function, the Google Plus. So now there is a dedicated Google Plus for the iPhone app that also works on the iPad, but this is Google Plus from the Google Reader app. Anyways, I'm going to close off this Find Friends, but it's not a bad interface if you have a Google Plus account. You basically get a stream. Let's go to the home, and you can see your circles. You can see your notifications. So, it's a handy tool because it's got all your Google services right there integrated. For example, I have Google Docs. I mean, the only limitation is that the app really requires the internet. But now it looks like you're going to be able to save photos. Let's try this from Picasa to your camera roll. So let's see if that works. I'm gonna well, I'm not sure how that works, but supposedly if you hold down, yep, save image, you can click it, it's fetching it. There's an interesting interface, and it's saved to camera roll. So they've added some functionality. So check it out. Geez, I wonder if the voice telephone calls work through this app. I think it does. Well, got a voicemail from a listener. So anyway, so check it out. Google Search. It's a good utility for your iPad. So check it out. Okay, so if you're into tech news, you might want to check out another free new app, and that's by TechCrunch. TechCrunch is a prominent website that breaks news on technology, innovation, startup companies. It was founded by Mike Arrington, who then sold it, I guess, last year to AOL. And there's now like this TechCrunch app that looks actually kind of nice on the iPad. It's got a very simple design. You've got the stories on the left in big, clear blocks. It's simple, and you can scroll up and down, and you can search it. You can, where it says home, you can press on, 4 horizontal lines that then have a drop-down index of TechCrunch's website, organized by startups, mobile, gadgets, social, TCTV, enterprise, funding and exits, gaming, green tech, opinion, and saved articles. And then they have the tweets from TechCrunch that are on the right. So it's if you're a big TechCrunch fan, it might be worth getting this free app. Under settings, you can connect to your Facebook account. I guess then that allows you maybe to put in comments. And so it's pretty simple. Let's see, when you open an article, it has a nice user interface. I'm looking in I guess what's that, landscape mode. Now let's go back to landscape mode. So you have the story, and you can see there's like 4 comments, and the comments load. Let's see how these comments look. It takes a little time to load. And you can add your comment using Facebook, Yahoo, AOL, or Hotmail. So those are your choices. So the comments sort of pop out like a floating screen. That's not bad. And on the right, then you have related content. And I'm not sure how you get that. And you can explore related content, and I guess that's like the content that relates to the article. So let's try something else. Digital chocolate downsizing. The related content is Digital Chocolate's website, and then I guess stuff mentioned in the article, and then below that are tweets and the articles relating to the tweets. So it's a pretty, I think it's a pretty well designed app regarding a dedicated news website. Now the thing is, does this make sense? If you read a lot of news, you might not want to just get it straight from the TechCrunch app. You could get it, you could have TechCrunch feed into your Flipboard app or some other app similarly that sort of aggregates RSS feeds from different websites. But on the other hand, if you're a big TechCrunch user and like to comment a lot and look through all of its content, this is a pretty nifty app. And I think more and more content providers are going to have nifty apps like this TechCrunch app. So overall, I think it's well designed and useful. Okay, so Apple made a change to the App Store and has a new section now when you go to, let's say, the iPad version of the apps or the iPhone, and it's called Editor's Choice. And so it's trying to highlight, it's help you find better apps. And so there's this Editor's Choice section, and it sort of flips through different apps that, they think that are great apps for the iPad. So for example, it shows Apple's own newsstand app, and let's see, what else do we have here? Sketchbook Inc. is listed under the Editor's Choice. It's a drawing app. Then it goes to Airmail, and this is like a game, if you're immersed in aerial adventure. And then there's another game that's dinosaurs that takes you back in time. And so this is a different way maybe to find apps, and Apple's trying to find a better way to maybe curate in the App Store. So that's something new you're going to see when you go to the App Store. Now, we heard of publishers going to the iPad, but it seems like one major publisher has left the iPad, and that's Yahoo. Now, Yahoo did release the Access web browsing app, but according to a story on NBCBayArea that came out on May 26, it says Yahoo quits iPad magazine, and the article basically says that the San Jose Mercury News reported that after just 7 months into its publication history, Yahoo pulled the plug on LiveStand, its iPad-based magazine app. And now it could be, they wanted to put all the energy into Access. The article says Yahoo's in a series of transitions with its fourth CEO in about a year. And apparently the flashy personalized digital magazine app LiveStand apparently failed to meet expectations. So it said LiveStand offered no original content. Users could see Yahoo content like sports and business news, as well as content from partners like Forbes. And the app was launched in November of last year. So it could be just part of a reorganization. I mean, frankly, its Access app, which is a search browser, is probably plenty. So anyways, so don't look for that app anymore because it's gone. And one of the more intriguing stories that came out this week came out on Cult of Mac by Mike Elgin, who's also on Google+. And it's really about a product that Apple may be developing that could work with the iPad that one would never think Apple would develop because Steve Jobs said it didn't ever make sense. Now remember, Steve Jobs basically said he doesn't believe in styluses in the iPad. And of course, a lot of people are using styluses with the iPad for drawing and such. But what's really interesting and what caught Mike Elgin's eye is that Apple apparently filed a patent for a touch-sensitive or haptic-sensitive stylus. And he's basically reporting on something that the site Patently Apple Wednesday posted, and it's a detailed analysis of a new Apple patent application for something would be like an iPen, a vibrating pen that makes noise. And the patent application describes a haptic stylus containing a tiny speaker which is designed to be used on touchscreens. And Elgin points out that, people are scratching their heads. Why would Apple go with the stylus? On the other hand, maybe, Elgin's point is that maybe Apple can do something much greater with the stylus, make it the ultimate stylus. Now, haptic is when you get like vibrations and feedback in devices, like when your iPhone vibrates, that's a haptic feedback. So Elgin is speculating that, with custom vibrations in this iPen, you could give feedback to somebody like painting and stuff like that. And, it would make like drawing much easier. It says here, Elgin says, Apple will offer haptic pens because they're a great idea. Apple is the leading the charge into post-PC world, and that means touchscreens, but illustrators, architects, designers, cartoonists, phone editors, and others aren't going to use their fingers for fine drawing and image manipulation. They use pens now, and they'll use pens in the post-PC world too. So basically they're saying that maybe Apple is going to come out with like the ultimate haptic pen that has incredible feedback that sort of recreates reality. And, I think he's got a point. I mean, Apple, Steve Jobs was famous for saying, no, we're not going to have video in the iPods, and then he came out with the video in the iPods. So really the caveat for Steve Jobs was that, no, we're not going to do something, but if we figure out a way to do it much better than anyone else, then we'll release it. So, it might be cool for Apple to, develop this sort of cutting edge stylus that's way above like any stylus that ever happened. And think about it, since Apple controls the iPad, Apple could make a stylus that works better than any other stylus with the iPad, because Apple controls the iPad. So Apple could put in all sorts of sensors or things in the iPad that work with the iPen that no other stylus could compete with. So, I'd like to see this. I do use a stylus every now and then, and I do pine for a better stylus. And if Apple can make like a truly better stylus that, sort of recreates the feel of, real writing and maybe makes it better, I'd go for it. Now, you figure the original iPad, which came out on April 2010, there's got to be a lot of them. It's been out for a long time. But according to a website called IntoMobile.com, the new iPad, which has only been out for, a couple of months, its usage on the internet now already exceeds the original iPad, which makes sense because, the third generation iPad has been selling like gangbusters. But here's the point of the article. It says, after 2 months on the market, usage for the new generation iPad, third generation iPad, has already surpassed usage on the original first generation iPad, according to a report from something called Localytics. And they've basically determined that the first generation iPad and iPad 2 and third generation iPad usage in computers, how they compare over different time frames. And they have like a little chart here. And let's see, in the period between May 16th and May 22nd, the third generation iPad had 20% share of the iPad usage, and the first generation had 20% share. And in the launch week of the third generation had 14%. Well, I mean, I guess the point of this is, there's just a lot of iPad 2s out. And I'm sure within a couple of months, a lot of third generation iPads. And I'm sure within a couple of months, the iPad third generation will even surpass the second generation. Okay, so another competitor of the iPad bites the dust. And according to ibtimes.com, Cisco, which launched its own tablet in 2011, has now killed it. It was called the Cisco Cius, and it's a funny article in IB Times. It says, by David Smith on May 25th, it says, the Cisco Cius, we hardly knew you. Less than a year after Cius hit shelves on July 31st, Cisco announced on Friday via company blog that it will discontinue all investments being poured into its tablet designed for business and enterprise professionals. So this tablet, if you recall, was supposed to be for the enterprise, but obviously the iPad's making inroads in the enterprise. The article goes on to say, quote, over the last year, Cisco, this is from the Cisco blog, Cisco has demonstrated commitment to delivering innovative software like Cisco Jabber and Cisco WebEx across a wide spectrum of operating systems, tablets, and smartphones, end quote, said O.J. Wingy, Senior Vice President of Cisco's Telepresence Technology Group. We're seeing tremendous interest in these software offerings. Customers see the value in these offerings, enabling employees to work on their terms in a post-PC era. But anyways, it goes on to say, based on these market transitions, Cisco will no longer invest in the Cisco tablet form factor, and no further enhancements will be made to the current Cius endpoint. So obviously, the iPad has trounced them. The article says Cisco's uphill battle against the iPad was made even more difficult by the Cius's price tag. Apparently, the Cius tablet started off at $750, and it was only 7 inches in size, while the larger iPad started at $500. So another one bites the dust, and the question is, who's going to be a real competitor to Apple's iPad in the tablet space? Okay, so that's it for the iPad podcast. This is episode 100. So we've hit a milestone. Thanks for listening. And again, you can support the podcast by giving it a positive review in the iTunes Store or on YouTube or on Blip TV, or go to maxfutures.com and give it, some Tumblr thanks. It's on Tumblr, so you can give it like a heart or whatever. So thanks for listening, and we'll have more iPad news next week.
This has been a Max Future production.